Now here's the man that needs no introduction.
Hey everybody, it's Jim here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Hey everybody, it's Jim here.
I've always wanted to do this.
Hey everybody, it's Jim here.
What's your connection to Parkinson's disease?
Hey everybody, it's Jim here.
Sorry, that's my foot.
I'll do better next time.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Spinning Wheels Parkinson's Conversation with Jim here podcast. I'm Jim here in beautiful yet a little bit chilly Ottawa, Ontario. My good friend Mike Loghrin is back in Toronto, Ontario. Today's guest, I am so grateful and thankful that she has agreed to come on the show. We met her in Smith Falls, Ontario last year as we were coming through the country. I also had the privilege of sharing a radio interview with her from a radio station in Perth. So I quite enjoyed that. And so I'd like to welcome Pat Evans from Portland, Ontario, which is in the county of Lanark, Leeds, and Grenville, just a little bit outside of Ottawa in Eastern Ontario. Welcome, Pat.
Hello, nice to be here.
Let's jump right into it, Pat. Can you tell us a little bit about your Parkinson's journey so far?
You know, I always hate the word journey. I've had to use it because sometimes it's the only word you can figure out. I was diagnosed in 2006. And the only reason I really remember that is that in 2007, I took part in the first super walk. So I didn't waste any time sort of getting into it. I kind of reacted totally differently than most people I've met. And I was by myself. The neurologist, who will remain nameless, was not the most sensitive person in the world. He said, "Yeah, you've got Parkinson's. Go to the next office over and talk to a social worker." So I did what I was told, and I went to talk to the social worker. And after 20 minutes, she said, "Geez, you sound like you've dealt with it really well, the diagnosis. Would you like to work with people with Parkinson's?" I said, "No. I'm a full-time social worker. Thanks very much. I have my full-time job and I help other people." And then I went back to the office and told everybody that I had Parkinson's. People kind of went, "You did?" Like, I realized afterwards, I've always just been this sort of out there person. And I called my husband, "Yeah, I got Parkinson's." So I guess I kind of figured I might have, because the neurologist said it'll take 3 months to an MRI. And I said, 3 months to find out whether I have, because he said a stroke, Miller's disease, or Parkinson's. And I thought, I'd like to know if I had a stroke earlier. Thanks very much. So I was lucky because my son's girlfriend at the time worked in an imaging department in Mississauga. I lived in Toronto. So within a week I had an MRI. So that was it. I had Parkinson's, and I've always been involved, and I just decided that was the way I had to deal with it. But interesting, I listened to Jeanine Allen a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She said something that really hit home for me. I've had a strong level of denial, not that I had Parkinson's, but that I would get worse. And somehow it's worked for me. I mean, yes, I have to adjust to the new normal when I do get a little bit worse, but then I think, but I'm not going to get worse than this, so that level of denial, I think, has been good for me.
Thinking back, what made you think that something was a bit off?
Oh, for me, it was pretty obvious, which I was lucky, because one day I went cycling with a friend. I came back from the cycling, and good thing to say to you, you're probably impressed. I was actually bicycling. My finger did this funny thing. And I thought, oh, it's just from having hands on the handlebar too tight or something. And then within 3 weeks, this feeling had spread all the way up my arm and kind of down my leg. And I thought, So it was pretty obvious. One day I didn't have a tremor, and the next day I did. And I had been hit on the head by a garage door 3 weeks before that. And neurologists have told me consistently it's likely not related, but I don't think I'll ever be convinced, because I got a pretty bad whack on the head. I was knocked to the ground. The funny thing is, I was also cycling that day. Jesus, you're going to be really impressed. I jumped over the fence in my garage, and of course, I didn't quite go it fast enough. So garage door came down, hit my head. I hit my bike. My bike hit the car that was in the driveway, and the alarm went off. So my husband came right out. "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I think so." Anyway, that's the story of my Parkinson's.
My math is correct. That's about 17 years.
I've done pretty well. My denial seems to be working. I don't like taking levodopa, I must confess, because I am very sensitive to it. And I think it affects my, I'm beginning to experience some dyskinesia. And I'm always I really think it's important, again, what Jeanine and many of your guests have said, you really need to, you can live well with it. And I think whenever I'm not doing as well, I always try to do what I call a reset. Like I try to think, okay, can I sleep better? Can I eat better? Can I exercise more? Get together with friends, whatever, whatever it is, I try to figure it out. And because I think there's so many people, the first support group I went to after I was diagnosed, because they said you should go to a support group, Parkinson Canada, and there was a 3-week one. I walked in there and everybody looked, so depressed. And I thought, oh my God. And I didn't go back to those particular 3 groups because I thought, I don't need that. And I've always been a person who just decided, well, okay, I got a problem. What do I do about it? It's the reality. You got a problem. We have all sorts of problems. Parkinson's not our only problem, right? So we have to figure out how we can move on with that.
What are some of the things that you did to move on?
Well, I got involved in a super walk. That was the first thing I did. I did a lot of fundraising. I told all my friends, they were all very supportive, which it feels good when you raise money and people back you. And I've still got people that years later are actually still supporting me financially with various Parkinson's endeavors. That's one of the first things I did. Started exercising more, tried to work a little bit less. And since then, 17 years is a long time. We lived in Toronto. And I worked pretty high stress job working with multi-problem families. And I was driving all over Toronto and I was juggling all sorts of things in the air and having to type all my reports. And it was too much. Eventually, I decided I would leave Toronto. We built a house and that was kind of stressful. We moved to the middle of nowhere. It's interesting because when I was in Toronto, I always believed that funding for research was the most important thing to do. And I even went into then director of fundraising, I can't remember her exact title, but and said, where does the money that I raise go? Because I want it all to go to research. And she said, well, really pretty much does now, because that's about how much we raise is what we give. So I thought, that's great. And then I moved to the country. It hit me over the head like, oh my God, where is everybody with Parkinson's? What do they do to keep healthy? Where did they go for services? There was nothing. Nothing. I got involved. I've always been an activist. In the 80s, I was a peace activist. In the 90s, I was an environmental activist. But since I got diagnosed, I've been a Parkinson's advocate. I really became the face of Parkinson's in this area. I didn't want to be, but, I felt that people needed to understand that I thought, and I think even in that area, especially in that area, there's more Parkinson's than there probably is anywhere in Ontario. I think that's my own personal theory, because Parkinson's has been associated with farming. This area is primarily rural and with well water. I'm on a well. I mean, so many people are on wells. And it's got one of the highest percentage of seniors in Ontario. Wouldn't that all, you think, conspire to create a huge number of people with Parkinson's? However, the number of people that I've met along the way in the last 10 years does not reflect that, although it's increasing. I mean, it used to be that I'd say Parkinson's is growing faster than any other neurological disease, and there are supposed to be so many people diagnosed, and they go, And now they say, They actually see it.
In terms of my background, I grew up about half an hour from where you live right now. And my grandmother had Parkinson's disease.
Mm-hmm.
And again, and so then I contracted, Parkinson's disease. I've been about 8 years, and I always thought, well, you know what, it's probably a genetic link, and potentially it is, somewhere. However, now I'm thinking, you know what, we drank the same water and ate the same foods, and they were all, pesticides and fertilizer and all that stuff. So now potentially there's a genetic link, but I'm more convinced than ever that that it has something to do with what I was eating, what I was drinking, the stuff that got into the food and the well water. And you know what, we throw around the numbers all the time, right? That Canada has the leading per capita rate of Parkinson's disease in the world. And you're right, it's set to double by 2040. I was a teenager when she had Parkinson's. I knew of nobody else in that area who had Parkinson's. And then when we came through Smith Falls last year, to see how many people were out at your exercise class was a bit staggering. And to know that that's just scratching the surface
Just barely.
of what's there.
And you probably had You probably had a genetic predisposition for it too, which probably we do have. We do have. I had no
Yeah.
Parkinson's in my family, but I did have, my brother had a major mental health problem. So,
Mhm.
it's very complicated. First of all, I needed to have exercise. I wanted a Parkinson's specific program. I needed to have people in my life connected to Parkinson's. I found a person who would run a boxing program, and we've been going now 5 years. And we first started, we allowed some other seniors, like my husband, for example. But now, of course, we can't, because there's so many people with Parkinson's. We don't let those seniors anywhere near us unless they happen to be, maybe if they really beg us. But so we started a boxing group, which is, and that but is what saved my life during COVID. Because we did it online when things were really bad. We did it in parks all summer. I never really struggled with mental health issues, luckily enough, but that's really what saved me, and I'm sure so many other people. And the support group, well, actually, we used to have three. We have one that's catering to sort of an older crowd. It's in a retirement home. And ours, well, we had 23 people last time. People come from all over too. It's not like a Peterborough or a Cornwall. People come from Smiths Falls. They come from Merrickville. They come from Westport. They come from Franktown. They come Carleton Place. They come from everywhere.
Yeah. And so really you could be driving for like 45 minutes to an hour, right? And also having the exercise class is so important.
It really points to the need to have more services, because people wait 2 years to either have an assessment in Kingston or in Ottawa. And I've really been talking a lot to people about that. Actually, one of the things that's happened that's made it really easier in terms of getting somewhat easier to get diagnosed for some people. In Kingston, the Kingston hospitals came up with a protocol to help family physicians and nurse practitioners feel more comfortable looking at a set of criteria and knowing that they could consult and have backup if possible. So people could get started on a trial of levodopa. The community health centers in particular have picked up that protocol, and nurse practitioners now are feeling slightly more comfortable diagnosing and following people with Parkinson's. So I'm very encouraged about that. My major goal now is to really try to see if we can get multidisciplinary care started. But the good news is that some of the organizations in the community are beginning to pick up on my message that Parkinson's is grossly underdiagnosed, and there's still such a huge stigma here, especially men, I think, who don't want to talk about the fact that they have Parkinson's. They were farmers, they were truck drivers, they were laborers, plumbing businesses, and they didn't want to admit that they had Parkinson's. They were afraid of losing their jobs, and people would treat them differently. The stigma dealing with that is an education of healthcare professionals to say, I've noticed this, have you thought about that? Because I've had so many people who've come to me and say, I know I have Parkinson's, my doctor doesn't believe me. They've taken the Davis-Finney manual, which is a wonderful resource, into their doctors and said, okay, I got this, and I got this, and I got this,
Yeah.
So that's my major concern and an area of work right now.
Talking about services, you have been instrumental in starting an organization in your neck of the woods. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I always felt that it was important to have money for the community, for community needs. And one of the things that we identified was respite services. We have an older population because I think the mean age 48, and in Toronto it's 38. We have just more seniors. They need things that other maybe younger people like yourself, Jim, and
well, thank you.
don't need. But we have got older people taking care of older people. We've wanted to spend money on respite, and also just having a day or two to educate our professionals, or to subsidize people for an exercise program or whatever. There's just so many needs out there. Started an organization called Parkinson's Community Network, the community being the important part. And since we started last December, we've raised, I think, almost $28,000. And it's not a huge amount of money, but it is important to keep that money in the community. And it is spent. I mean, I didn't really want to create another charity or another organization, but I really felt that we needed to have something in the community that reflected our needs. People who are involved with it are all people in their 70s that have Parkinson's. There is a finite capacity. So I guess my job be to go around and talk to younger people, because I think it's the younger people that are going to save us. It's not going to be us ourselves. They are the ones that need to be educated about this disease, because a lot of them are going to get it.
So you don't have a website yet, but for anyone in the Lanark, Leeds, Grenville counties, if they're interested in supporting the Parkinson Community Network,
donations through the Perth and District Community Foundation. And so if they go onto their website and they scroll down, the Perth and District Community Foundation does this with a number of organizations. So if they look under Parkinson's Community Network, then they can give online, or they can send a check right to the Perth and District Community Foundation with Parkinson's Community Network on the memo line, so that they know which organization it's for. But I want to say to you how much I appreciated your efforts, and it was really great when you came into town. It was the hottest day, if I remember correctly. It was so hot, and it was just so neat. You were also late, so we weren't in the rain like other people, but we were in the street, like, where are they? Oh my God. But anyway, it was really great to have you three, and it was fun. It was really fun. And the mayor came out. Do you remember the mayor came out?
Absolutely, the mayor came out.
And here's the ever popular segment, Jim's Spinning Wheels Tour Flashback.
And so let's get into that a little bit. How did you actually, you set that up, right? It wasn't us saying, "Oh, we got to go to Smith Falls." What led to you reaching out?
I think I've always watched out for people who were doing stuff like you guys, because I could never do it myself. I don't think I've got what it takes. I had so much admiration for you folks. Another guy, Dale, who helps me run the support group, he was really keen on having you as well. So I thought, yeah, but we got to make it worth their while. Somehow we got to feed them at the very least.
Hey, everybody. I would sincerely like to thank Pat Evans for coming on the Spinning Wheels Parkinson's Conversation with Jim here podcast. I met up with Pat last time we were coming across the country with the Spinning Wheels tour. Pat is a rock solid person in our community, in the Parkinson's community and in the community in general. She's been dealing with the disease for a long time, but you would never know it in front of how she looks and how her positive attitude really lets her function to the best of her ability. Thanks again, Pat. We really appreciate you sharing your Parkinson's journey with us. Just a reminder, if you could share this podcast with one other person, we'd sincerely appreciate that. Whether that's Pat's episode that you just finished listening to, or going all the way back to episode 1. We think we have some really good programs for you, and you know what, maybe they're worth checking out a second or a third time. So spread the word and have a look. We would sincerely appreciate that. Until next time, thank you very much for being here. Be safe, and we'll talk to you later. Spinning Wheels, Parkinson's Conversations with Jim here, is brought to you in part by Parkinson's Awareness and Action, and they're in Cornwall, Ontario, and you can check them out on Facebook. Also brought to you partially by PDT, the healing power of tea applied to Parkinson's, and you can check them out at pdt.com. Thank you very much.
His first comments was, "It tastes awful," and that maybe that works for cough syrup, but it shouldn't be the case for tea. So PDT tastes nice.